It started on a normal Tuesday evening, just after dinner. I was scrolling through my phone, half watching a show in the background, when I got a notification from my Ring camera. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe a delivery or a neighbor walking by. But something made me open it. Call it instinct. What I saw next shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. There she was, my wife of 6 years, standing on our front porch laughing. But it wasn't just her. She wasn't alone. A man, someone I didn't recognize right away, was with her. They were close. Too close. His hand touched her lower back, and she didn't pull away. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Right there. On the porch of the home we built together. My heart stopped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. For a moment, I thought maybe I was misunderstanding. Maybe it was an old friend. A goodbye hug taken the wrong way. But the camera doesn't lie, and neither did the body language. The way she smiled at him. The way she looked around nervously before unlocking the door. The same door I had installed with my own hands just last year. I watched in disbelief as they walked inside. Together. It felt like someone had knocked the air out of my lungs. I sat there frozen, phone still in my hand, not knowing what to do. A part of me wanted to rush home, confront them, demand answers. But another part, maybe the smarter part, told me to wait. To gather everything. Because this wasn't just betrayal. It was a complete breakdown of trust, and I needed to be sure before I blew everything up. I started checking older Ring footage. Days, even weeks back. And what I found made my stomach turn. This wasn't the first time. There were several recordings, different times, same guy. Sometimes during the day when I was at work. Sometimes late at night when I thought she was out with friends. It all started to make sense. The sudden distance. The late nights. The cold shoulder. All those little things I had brushed off as stress or routine. Now I knew the truth. My wife had been having an affair. And the proof was right there in my hands. But I didn't confront her right away. No shouting matches. No scenes. I stayed quiet. I started planning. Because if she wanted to play dirty, I was going to show her I could play smarter. And let me tell you, what happened next. She never saw it coming. Not her. Not him. By the time I was done, both of them had lost more than they ever imagined. And I didn't even have to lift a finger. They thought they were being careful. They thought they were in control. But the camera was always watching. And now, they're jobless. Homeless. And it all started with a single notification. Want to know how I pulled it off? Keep watching. I didn't sleep much that night. I just kept replaying the footage over and over again, like some twisted movie I couldn't turn off. Every frame felt like another punch in the gut. And the worst part? I loved her. Or, at least I thought I did. We'd been through so much together, moving cities, building careers, trying for kids. She was my person. Or so I believed. The next morning, I watched her get ready like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek and said she'd be working late again. That used to worry me. I used to ask her if she was okay if work was too stressful. Now I just nodded, pretending like I didn't know she had someone else waiting for her. Someone who probably thought this was all just a fun little secret. I had a choice to make. I could explode, confront her right then and there, and let everything fall apart in one big, messy argument. Or I could be patient, get all the pieces lined up. I decided on the second option. Not out of cruelty, but because I wanted clarity. I needed to understand why. Why did she do this to me? To us? That week, I started paying more attention. I checked the Ring camera daily, reviewed every clip. I noticed little things I hadn't seen before. Sometimes they'd meet outside and walk in together. Sometimes she'd come back looking flustered, makeup smudged, hair messy. Once, she even came back wearing a different jacket. That's when it clicked. This wasn't some emotional affair. This was physical, repeated, planned. I started checking her location history on her phone. She'd left it open once, when we shared an iCloud account. I remembered the login. What I saw confirmed everything. Lunch breaks that didn't match her work schedule. Gaps in time that made no sense. Trips to places we never went together. One location kept popping up, an apartment complex on the other side of town. I looked it up. 1-bedroom units. Cheap rent. I could only guess it belonged to him. But who was this guy? I didn't recognize him from our friend circle. He definitely wasn't someone she ever mentioned. I reverse searched his face using one of those online tools. After a bit of digging, I found him. His social media was wide open. His name was Evan. Worked in the same building as her, just a few floors down. That explained how they met. A few tagged photos later, I figured out more. He was single. Or at least he posted like he was. Gym selfies, late-night bar pics, and one photo that nearly made my blood boil, him wearing a hoodie I had bought her for Christmas. So now I had names, faces, locations, and cold, undeniable evidence. But that wasn't enough. I needed to know how long this had been going on. I checked our credit card statements. Sure enough, things popped up. Charges from restaurants I'd never been to, hotel bookings I didn't remember, Uber rides during times I was supposedly out of town for work. She used our shared card. Bold. Or careless. Maybe both. I even found an old receipt for a weekend trip she took with her cousin. Except now I knew she didn't have a cousin in that city. At this point, the betrayal felt so deep I couldn't tell if I was more hurt or angry. It was like I was living with a stranger, smiling at me during breakfast, telling me she loved me at night, all while sneaking around behind my back. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the lies, the manipulation, the sheer ease with which she did it. I couldn't take it anymore. I called out sick from work for a couple days and just started planning. Quietly, carefully. I made backups of all the footage, saved the texts, downloaded her location history, printed out receipts. I didn't want to go nuclear yet. I just wanted to have everything, every shred of truth, before I made my move. The only person I told was my best friend, Marcus. He and I go way back since high school. I showed him everything. He was furious, said I should kick her out immediately. But I told him I wasn't ready. Not yet. There was something about watching her lie to my face every day that gave me the strangest sense of control. Like I had power again. She thought she was fooling me, but I was just waiting for the right moment. One night, after she left claiming she had to work overtime again, I decided to follow her. I stayed a few cars behind, careful not to be noticed. Sure enough, she didn't head to the office. She drove straight to that apartment complex. Parked. Walked up. And he opened the door. I stayed parked across the street, lights off, just staring. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty. Like whatever part of me that had hope still left just burned out right there. I drove back home that night with a plan forming in my mind. This wasn't going to be some emotional meltdown. This was going to be surgical. Precise. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to make sure they felt the consequences. All of them. What they didn't know was that the Ring camera wasn't the only thing watching. I had access to more than they realized. And when I finally made my move, it would be permanent. But I wasn't there yet. I still had more to uncover. Because deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this affair was more complicated than it looked. And I was right. What I found next turned everything upside down. The next few days were the hardest. I had all this information, all this proof, and I had to keep pretending like everything was normal. I'd wake up, make coffee, sit at the table across from her, and listen to her talk about work like she wasn't sneaking around behind my back. Every laugh, every smile, every casual touch, it all felt fake. And I had to play along. Because I wasn't ready to strike yet. Not until I understood the full picture. That gut feeling I had, that something else was going on, I couldn't shake it. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. There was more to it. The way she was moving lately, the way she was extra careful with her phone, always keeping it face down, never letting it out of her sight. It wasn't just guilt. It felt like she was hiding something deeper. One afternoon, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the dresser. It was risky, but I opened it. She used to trust me with her password. That didn't change. I opened her messages, and what I found made my skin crawl. She wasn't just talking to Evan. There were messages to a third person, someone named Lena. At first, I thought it was just a friend. But the tone was different. They were talking about money. about keeping things quiet, about making sure he never finds out. I took photos of everything, scrolled as fast as I could. There were mentions of an account I'd never heard of,
Payouts.
even references to something about a job opening that Evan apparently landed thanks to her hookup. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just some passionate fling. It was strategic, calculated, and I was being used. I started connecting dots I hadn't seen before. Around the same time our marriage started to feel distant, she'd been promoted at work. Nothing major, but it came with new responsibilities and connections. I remember her talking about how Evan had been applying for a position but needed an inside referral. I never thought anything of it back then.
But now?
Now I wondered if she used her position to help him get in, and if there was something in it for her beyond just attention. The money angle bugged me. I started reviewing our bank records again. This time, I dug deeper. She had a separate savings account I didn't even know about. Small deposits. Then suddenly, a large transfer a month ago. When I checked the source, it wasn't her job. It was from a company I'd never heard of. I searched the name. It was connected to Evan's old employer. It looked like he'd gotten a severance package or a payout, and some of it had gone to her. Was he paying her? Was she part of some scheme? Or was this just how they covered up their tracks? My head was spinning. I thought I was just dealing with a cheating wife, but it was starting to feel like something darker. Something more deliberate. Meanwhile, on the surface, she kept playing the part.
Sweet.
Supportive. Talking about planning a trip for our anniversary. I smiled, nodded, even agreed. But inside, I was boiling. She was planning getaways with me while coordinating backdoor deals and hookups with someone else. Marcus and I started mapping everything out. Names, dates, amounts. I even drove by that apartment complex during the day, hoping to maybe catch a glimpse of what was really going on. That's when I saw Evan coming out, not with my wife, but with a different woman. She was younger, dressed casually, and they looked close. Now I was confused again. Was he cheating on her, too? I followed them to a nearby cafe. I stayed out of sight but close enough to watch. They weren't just friends. There were touches. A kiss on the cheek. The kind of looks you give someone when you're trying to impress them. And suddenly I realized my wife wasn't Evan's only woman. That night, I reviewed her messages again. There were fewer texts than usual. Something had changed. She was pulling back. Her tone with Evan had shifted. There was tension. One message stood out. She had written, "You need to be careful. If this blows up, we both lose everything." It clicked. She wasn't just worried about me finding out. She was worried about losing something else, maybe her job, maybe her reputation. I started wondering if Evan had manipulated her, too. If he had promised things, dangled opportunities. Or maybe she knew from the start and just thought she could control it all. Either way, they were tangled in something messy, and I was stuck in the middle of it. I kept watching the Ring camera footage. Every time she came and went, I took notes. I noticed her patterns were shifting. Less time at the apartment. More time pacing on the phone outside, looking nervous. She was unraveling. The pressure was getting to her. I wasn't ready to blow everything up yet, but I knew I was getting close. I had enough dirt to ruin both of them. And now that Evan was seeing someone else, the cracks in their little secret romance were starting to show. But there was still one thing I didn't understand. Who was Lena? And what role did she play in all of this? The answer was coming. I could feel it. I just had to wait a little longer. Because when I finally pulled the last thread, everything was going to fall apart. Everything was starting to close in, and the more I uncovered, the less it felt like just an affair. It was like I had fallen into some twisted maze, one where every turn led to another lie, another layer. I couldn't even look at my wife without wondering what new secret she was hiding. But I still kept quiet. I still smiled and acted like nothing was wrong because I needed just a little more time. I was close to the edge, but I didn't want to jump until I was sure I had everything in place. The name Lena kept bouncing around in my head. That text conversation between her and my wife, it wasn't casual. It was cautious. There were no emojis, no slang, no signs of friendship. It felt like business. Cold, sharp and controlled. I looked her up. It took some digging, but eventually, I found her LinkedIn. She worked in HR at the same company where my wife and Evan worked. That's when things really started to click. This wasn't just about cheating. This was about power. Lena had influence over who got hired, who got promoted, and who got quietly removed. If she was in the loop, that meant my wife and Evan might have used her to pull strings. The job Evan landed? Probably thanks to Lena. The money transfers? Maybe part of some agreement. A favor paid back. Or a silent spot. I kept digging and eventually discovered that Lena had once been on probation at work for mismanaging internal records. Nothing major, at least on paper. But I got curious and reached out to someone I used to know who worked in that company's accounting department. We weren't close, but I bought him coffee and asked casual questions. Just small talk. Then I asked if he'd ever heard of anyone getting quiet payments or side deals. At first, he just laughed. Said stuff like that always happens behind the scenes, but nobody talks about it. Then I showed him Evan's name.
His face changed.
He didn't say much after that. Just that things were weird around the time Evan got hired. Said there were sudden orders from above to rush his application. That someone from HR was personally pushing it through even though he lacked key experience. It all added up. The affair wasn't just emotional or physical. It was a cover. Evan had used my wife, and she had gone along with it, maybe willingly, maybe out of fear. And Lena? She was the one keeping the whole thing stitched together. But now the stitching was coming undone. They were slipping. The messages were shorter. My wife looked tired all the time. Paranoid, even. She checked the door more often. She'd ask if I'd noticed anything strange. She even asked if the Ring camera had ever glitched. I told her no. Straight face.
Calm voice.
I told her everything was fine. But it wasn't. What she didn't know was that I had already set a few traps. I started forwarding copies of everything to myself to a secure drive and even to an anonymous email I created just in case. I even took a fake call one night while she was in a room, pretending I was talking to a lawyer. I watched her reaction out of the corner of my eye. Her face went pale. She spilled her coffee.
She asked who I was talking to.
I just smiled and said it was about work. That's when I knew. She was scared. Evan must have sensed it too. I noticed he hadn't been around the apartment complex lately. I checked the camera footage and noticed that she wasn't going there anymore. The texts from him became erratic, more demanding, even angry. He accused her of pulling away, asked if she was backing out. One text read, "Don't forget what you promised. We both go down if this leaks." They were spiraling, turning on each other. The pressure was breaking them down, piece by piece. One night, I pretended to fall asleep early. I heard her leave the bedroom and whisper on the phone. I recorded the whole thing from the hallway. She was begging someone, probably Lena, to help her shut it down. She said things like, "He's onto something, and I think he knows more than he's saying." She sounded desperate. The next morning, she acted normal again. Made breakfast.
Kissed my cheek.
Asked if I wanted to go out for dinner that weekend. I just nodded and told her I'd check my schedule. Meanwhile, I made one more stop. I visited Evan's workplace. Not to confront him, but to watch. From a distance. He looked nervous. Jumpy. Constantly looking over his shoulder. He walked out during lunch and made a phone call on the sidewalk. I couldn't hear what he said, but I recognized the body language. He was losing control. He knew something was coming, but he didn't know from where. That's when I decided it was almost time. I had all the footage, messages, emails, phone records, screenshots, and even audio. My ducks were in a row. But there was still one thing I didn't expect. That evening, when I got home, my wife was already waiting. She looked like she hadn't slept. Eyes red, hands shaking. She asked if we could talk. I said sure. She sat down, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "There's something I need to tell you." And in that moment, I knew the truth was finally crawling out. But I didn't let her speak. Not yet. Because her confession wasn't going to change what I was about to do next. She sat across from me, knees bouncing, fingers twitching like they didn't know what to do with themselves. I could see the guilt sitting heavy in her eyes, and for a second, I thought this might be it. She was finally going to tell me everything. I gave her a chance. I stayed quiet. I leaned back in my chair and just stared, waiting for her to speak. But what she said caught me completely off guard. "It's not just about Evan," she whispered. I didn't flinch. I wanted to keep control of the moment. "Then what is it about?" She hesitated, then looked around, like she was afraid someone else might be listening. "You were never supposed to know. I was just trying to protect you." That line made me want to laugh out loud, but I kept my mouth shut. Protect me? That's what cheaters say when they're backed into a corner. But then she said something that froze me. "He's not who you think he is." That was the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. Not fear of getting caught, but fear of him. I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" She swallowed hard. "At first it was just flirting. He was charming, confident. He made me feel seen. And yes, I gave in. But then things changed. He started asking for things, little favors. Introductions. Referrals. He said he needed help getting on his feet again. That his old job treated him unfairly. I believed him. I crossed my arms, not letting her off the hook. And the money? She shook her head. That's where it got worse. He asked me to move some money into an account. Said he had a payout but needed someone to hold it temporarily because of tax issues. I was stupid. I agreed. I didn't know until later that the money wasn't his to begin with. Now I was listening differently. My heart was pounding, but not from anger anymore. This was something else. Something bigger. "What are you saying?" She looked down. "I think he's been embezzling. Or laundering. I don't know. All I know is he promised he'd fix it, and then he started threatening me. Said if I told anyone, he'd destroy me. He knew about you, our finances, even my parents. He said he had dirt on everyone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All this time, I thought I was dealing with two people sneaking around like teenagers. But now it sounded like Evan was playing a much deeper game. I stood up and walked to the window. My mind raced. If she was telling the truth, and I had no reason to trust her completely, then everything I'd uncovered so far was just the surface. And the trap I was setting? It could drag me into something much more dangerous than just exposing an affair. "Why didn't you go to the police?" I asked without turning around. "I couldn't," she said, voice cracking. "He made it clear that if I did, people would get hurt. He said he had people watching. He even knew things about you that I never told him. Like your old job, your side business. Stuff I barely even talk about." Now that was terrifying, because I had worked on a sensitive project years ago. Stuff I signed NDAs for. How would Evan even know? I turned to face her. "So now what?" "You just wait until he burns everything down." She wiped her eyes and shook her head.
No.
"I've been collecting things too. Messages. Bank records. Voice recordings. I didn't know how to stop him, but if you're doing something, if you're planning to take him down, maybe I can help." I stared at her, heart thudding like a war drum. This was a twist I never expected. She wasn't just part of the problem. She might actually be the key to solving it. But that didn't mean I forgave her. Not even close. I still didn't know if she was a victim or just someone trying to save herself now that the walls were closing in. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind. The affair. The money. Lena. And now this, Evan possibly being involved in something criminal. My original plan was to confront them both with everything I had. Expose the cheating. Ruin their jobs. Their reputations. But now, if I did that, I could also blow open something much bigger, and maybe put myself or others at risk. The stakes had just skyrocketed. The next morning I called Marcus and told him everything. He didn't believe me at first. But when I showed him the messages, the transfers, and now what my wife had confessed, he went silent. "You know this could go federal, right?" he finally said. "If what she's saying is true, this is fraud."
White fraud.
Possibly worse. I nodded. "I think we need to bring someone in. But we have to be careful. If Evan's watching us like she says, one wrong move could ruin everything." And just like that, our plan changed. No more quick revenge. No more emotional outbursts. This had become something else. We were going to take Evan down. But not just for cheating with my wife. Now it was about exposing the whole operation. We just had to survive long enough to do it. The day everything came to a head started out quiet. Too quiet. My wife and I barely spoke over breakfast, and every movement she made felt rehearsed, like she was trying too hard to appear normal. I checked the Ring camera notifications again. No signs of Evan for the past 3 days. That only made me more suspicious. If he was hiding, it meant he knew the heat was coming. By then, Marcus had already helped me compile everything. The messages, the money trails, even audio clips from my wife's confession. We had all the pieces. But instead of going straight to the police, we decided to meet with a contact Marcus had, someone with experience in corporate investigations. He wanted to see the evidence himself and confirm whether we were dealing with just an affair gone wrong or something deeper. That meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. But the night before, everything exploded. I got home late. My wife wasn't in the living room. The house felt off, like someone had been inside and rearranged things just enough to unsettle you. The lamp was on, but dimmed. A glass on the table had a lipstick mark I didn't recognize. And then I saw it. My laptop was missing. Panic hit instantly. I ran to the bedroom. The top drawer, where I had a backup drive? Empty. I checked the hallway closet where I'd hidden a flash drive taped under the shelf.
Gone.
My wife came out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her. "You're home early," she said, but her voice was too calm.
Is zegt her.
"Where is it?" She didn't ask what I meant. That told me everything. "You don't understand," she said, stepping closer. "He called me. He said he knew that if I didn't get the files, he'd go after you. He knows where your parents live." I felt like the air had been punched out of me. "So, you gave him everything?"
No.
"I took copies," she whispered. "I'm not on his side. Not anymore. But I had to make it look like I was." At that moment, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A photo of Marcus, standing outside his apartment. Then another text. "Tell him to back off. Or he's next." That was it. I'd had enough. I called Marcus and told him to leave his place and meet me at our contact's office, right away. I didn't care if Evan was watching. Let him know we were coming. Let him panic. We arrived at the office, locked in, files uploaded, voice recordings backed up to multiple cloud drives. The investigator reviewed everything, his eyes wide the entire time. After 2 hours, he looked up and simply said, "You need to go to the authorities. Now." And we did. By the next morning, federal agents had begun digging into Evan's background. Turns out he was already under quiet investigation for similar fraud at a former employer. He'd skipped town right before that company went under internal audit. My wife's account had unknowingly become part of his laundering scheme. Lena? She had helped falsify employment records to make Evan look clean on paper. They raided Evan's apartment the following week. But he was gone. Completely vanished. That's when the final twist hit. He'd cleaned out Lena's account too. Left her with nothing. And the day after the raid, Lena was let go by the company.
No fanfare. Just gone.
Fired for policy violations. Same with my wife. Her involvement with falsified financial records couldn't be brushed off anymore. The company had to distance itself. She was escorted out without a chance to clean her desk. When I came home that night, she was sitting on the couch, crying.
Job gone.
Evan gone. Savings frozen. She had nothing left. She looked up at me. "I'm sorry," she said again, voice barely there. But I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't anything. Just numb. I didn't yell. I didn't throw her out. I just told her I needed space. And she left. I watched from the Ring camera as she stepped outside with a small bag, got into a car, and drove away. That was the last time I saw her in person. Weeks passed. Evan was still missing. But one morning, I got an alert from the Ring app. Motion at the front door. I opened the feed, expecting maybe a delivery. Instead, I saw Evan. Disheveled.
Dirty.
Looking over his shoulder like a fugitive. He stepped up to the door, looked into the camera, and said, "You think this is over? It's not." Then he walked off. I froze.
Called the agent assigned to the case.
They were tracking him, but he'd been slipping through gaps. Changing identities. Using old contacts. But here's the part that still gives me chills. When they reviewed the camera footage, they noticed something. He wasn't looking into the lens. He was looking just past it. At the upstairs window. Which meant he wasn't alone. I didn't sleep at all that night. After seeing Evan on the Ring camera, looking not into the lens but toward the upstairs window, I walked through every inch of the house, flashlight in hand, heart pounding like a war drum. She agreed to testify, which helped reduce her liability, but not her consequences. Her reputation was done. Professionally, socially, financially, everything collapsed around her. Lena tried to do the same, but the company didn't give her that chance. She had been a willing accomplice in creating fake references, redirecting funds, and even covering for Evan's whereabouts while he was on the run. She wasn't just fired, she was investigated. Her assets were frozen. She and Evan had burned every bridge, and now she was paying for it. And me? I moved out of that house. It never felt like home after that. Too many memories. Too many shadows. I stayed with my brother for a while, then eventually found a smaller place. Nothing fancy, just quiet. Somewhere I could think. The thing people don't talk about is what happens after the chaos ends. Once the cops leave, the headlines fade, and people stop asking questions, you're just left with the silence. The kind that gets inside your head. I kept asking myself if I missed something earlier, signs, warnings, little cracks in the foundation. The truth is, maybe I did. Maybe I didn't want to see them. But in the end, I did what I had to do. I exposed the affair. I brought the truth out, no matter how ugly it was. I protected myself. And even if it didn't end with someone being dragged away in handcuffs on camera, I still got what mattered most: freedom. Closure. The weight off my chest. Last I heard, Evan had been spotted trying to cross into Canada. They haven't caught him yet, but the trail's getting tighter. He left behind enough digital fingerprints to keep the feds on his tail for a long time. Eventually, he'll slip up. Guys like him always do. My wife reached out once more. Just one message. No apologies this time, no explanations. Just said she hoped I was okay and that she was trying to start over somewhere new. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Her betrayal cut deep, but the lies afterward were what truly broke us. Some things just can't be rebuilt. If there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that trust is fragile. Once it's broken, even the truth can't always fix it. And that sometimes, the people who smile at you every morning are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. So yes, I caught my wife and her affair partner on my Ring camera. And yes, they both lost everything.
Jobs. Homes.
Reputations. But me? I got my peace back. And after everything that happened, that's more valuable than revenge ever could be.